They say there's 4 levels of spiritual awakening. In level 1, wish there was a better word for this, but level 1 is you're a victim, right? Unfortunately, is what it is. It's like life is happening to you is the phrase, right? So I've been there, it's that victim mentality. And then level 2 is, I like to call him the achiever. Yeah, life is happening by you. Like you set goals, you achieve things, and you get out of victimhood into level 2 consciousness by asking the question. It's like, hey, like, am I really stuck, or am I really at the mercy of? So the faculty of questioning is what breaks you through from level 1 to level 2. And in level 2, life is happening by you. Yeah, so you're achievement oriented. And I think that's the big shift that we're currently going through right now, because people are going through from level 2, and this is the shift to level 3 consciousness. And level 3, I mean, you don't forget everything that you learned in level 1 and level 2, but you move into a space where life is happening for you. And I mean, I struggle to communicate this effectively, but it's the flower or the surrenderer. It's someone that's got an incredible amount of trust. They don't really need to set goals anymore. They set a lot of intentions. Yeah, so it's like I set the intention instead of going, hey, like in level 2, it's like my business needs to earn, let's just say $200,000 a year or whatever that it is. And that's a very strict goal, through offering this, and these offerings need to get to there. But the person that's in level 3 is like, hey, if abundance is meant for me, then it's going to come my way. And I'm sure there'll be things that show up on my past. I set the intention for abundance, but however it shows up, whether it's financial, whether it's in relationships, whatever it is in, yeah, I'm trusting that that's actually the type of abundance that's meant to show up for me.
Welcome to Cosmic Conversations, the podcast where we explore the depths of spiritual awakening, cosmic wisdom, and personal transformation. I'm your host, Hayden Crawford, and today I'm thrilled to have an incredibly special guest with us, Amrit Sandhu. Now, Amrit is a spiritual guide, an inspiring teacher, and the host of the Inspired Revolution podcast, where he brings profound insights and wisdom to help individuals unlock their highest potential. Amrit's work has touched the lives of many people across the globe, offering guidance on everything from spiritual awakening to aligning with one's true soul purpose. He's here today to share his wisdom, insights into personal growth, and how we can all live in deeper alignment with our higher selves. So, Amrit, thank you so much for joining us today on Cosmic Conversations. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here with us.
Oh, Hayden, it is such a treat to be here. Thank you so much for having me, brother. It is, really excited for where today's conversation is going to take us. And thank you so much. Such an honor to be here.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for saying that. So, Amrit, your journey into spiritual awakening has inspired so many people. Can you share the pivotal moments that led you to embrace your purpose in guiding other people?
Yeah, touch wood. So, I guess one of the things that people generally ask me with the podcast, Inspired Evolution, what have you learned over the years? Like any overarching themes and messages? I mean, for me personally, I'll digress for just a sec. It's about momentum. Like we've been launching a podcast every week for the last 8 years. In the last 2 years, it's been 2 a week. And everything you sort of see, around the podcast and the energy around it, touch wood, is all thanks to just building momentum. That's for me personally, like a personal lesson. Like I can sort of take that into parts of my life and apply that. When it comes to, what is the podcast thematically sort of taught me from having such various teachers on the podcast over the years, there is this consistent thing, which is our biggest challenges lead to our biggest gifts, right? So you get teachers on and, very rarely is a diamond formed without pressure. Yeah. And that, well, sounds like I called myself a diamond. There's a part of me for that touch wood. But you see these teachers come on and they, like, I'll take an example. We've got some of your audience might be familiar with Marissa Peer. She's got a certification. She teaches people rapid transformational therapy. She's a hypnosis on steroids, but like accelerates people's hypnosis healing journeys. And she was told her entire life that she was never going to amount to anything. Like that was the messaging she kept getting to the point where it was just eroding her self-esteem all the way down. And her message that she leads with the world now is, I'm enough. I am enough. You are enough. We are enough. Right. And you can sort of see that she was trodden on so hard to finally emerge with like, actually, enough's enough. And that's not true. And it's almost like that pressure then forges. And now she's world renowned for rapid transformational therapy. So that to sort of say, I see that. And that's not just like, I see that everywhere. Like every teacher that comes on that has a really profound sort of message that they're standing behind, this thematic underline undertone, which is our biggest challenge equals our biggest gifts. For me, I can sort of see that I've been through two challenges, and I don't like to call them the dark nights of the soul anymore. We had a teacher come on, and she said we no longer call them, Christina Lopez. She doesn't call them the dark nights of the soul because it implies that your soul can go dark. And I was like, actually, your soul doesn't go dark. It's a dark night for the mind for sure, but it's kind of like the soul's actually bringing you into alignment in those phases, but the mind's having this harrowing experience because it runs soul deep. So two dark nights of the two dark nights of the mind that I've experienced where the soul's kind of coming into alignment. I struggled with 6 years of depression, major depression, diagnosed, and we can talk more about what was going on for me at that point. But that's sort of the healing that came to me through there. And this is a little bit of a caveat because mindfulness and meditation, when I say it healed me, when I share it from stage, I say it reconstituted my life. But a little bit of the caveat is I don't think it's true for everybody that mindfulness and meditation is going to heal you from depression. I think depression is actually too blanket a term. There's quite a few things going on underneath depression that deserve some nuance to be able to diagnose what's going on. And you could argue some of my life's work's dedicated to that. That's where purpose and meaning comes into health and mental health. But for me, my truth was that I was living out of alignment. So that was really profound for me to, come into mindfulness and meditation. And that actually really helped me recognize like the nature of my mind, build a new relationship with my mind. And that actually took a little bit longer than medication, but medication wasn't right for me, I believe. And so mindfulness and meditation reconstituted my life. And that was the gift that came from my first dark night of the mind. And that brought a lot of self-awareness, as you can imagine, for those that are meditators or those that know meditators, they're generally very self-aware because they're watching their thoughts a lot, right? So then they end up watching themselves and they sort of go through this, oh, I'm like this, I have these tendencies. So you become very self-aware. And with all of that, like there was quite a transformation that I went through. Um, the dark night, the second dark night of the mind rocked up with, 7.5 years, ultimately 15 years of being aligned to a career that was misaligned. Yeah. And that was in its own right very challenging. It was interesting as well because even with all the self-awareness, yeah, you can still end up misaligned, because you're aware of where you're misaligned, but you still bear it because of the society and its functions and the way that it's built, unable to actually create a shift and change. And this is where, like, again, that was one of these really big challenges, career misalignment, and then coming into living in alignment to my values, right? So understanding who I was and from a values perspective, and then taking the courage to actually live in alignment to them. That was a huge next piece for me. And that was the second dark night of the mind that I went through to then come into living in alignment to my purpose, and trusting that that was actually not only going to feel the freest, but actually be the most abundant version of my life. In every right, not just abundance financially, but abundance in joy, abundance, and now I'm a father. It's you can actually see the abundance in different ways showing up as well. Touch wood, right? Like there's cranky dad who's putting up with tolerating things in life, and then there's happy dad who's enjoying the work that he's doing, enjoying being around his kids. Touch wood, and so there's all these downwind benefits. But those are the two big challenges that I think sort of fit the narrative, if you will, to sort of explain the nature of where this work for the inspired evolution comes from. I'm quite clear had I not been in meditate, like come to meditation and mindfulness, the inspired evolution wouldn't look the way that it is. But literally, the inspired evolution was birthed out of my career misalignments. I saw people such as yourself, having incredible impact doing the work that they were doing in the world. Yeah, I was ready to evolve, and I was inspired. They were inspired, and I myself was ready to evolve, but I had no idea how to get there. And that was the birthplace of the podcast, interviewing these people every week to sort of just understand the nature of what's important, like what their important message is, but then also how they came to sharing that with the world and how how they enabled that for themselves. So yeah, that's been the journey.
I love that. And thank you so much, for sharing that with us today. Because, for a lot of people, I think that, they're going through the dark night of the mind, which I absolutely love. I'm going to start adopting that
Good. Yeah, thank
because it
you.
does make complete sense that,
Doesn't it?
oh my God, yeah, totally. And
It's got a
and you
better
know what?
feeling. Sorry, I should stop interrupting. But yeah, it just got a better feeling to it, doesn't it?
It has a much better feeling to it, yeah, because the soul certainly isn't dark. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's amazing, isn't it? All these little misconceptions, these little phrases that we just adopt without even thinking about until you analyze what it's actually saying. And then
Mm.
you're like, oh no, well, actually, that's not true. And I choose not that anymore. But yeah, I think a lot of people that get, especially when they get stuck in the corporate trap, because I was the same as you. I was in corporate IT recruitment for my sins, and I did it for 15 years, and I knew something was wrong. I was just going through the motions, and I was very successful, and that was all very, very nice. It enabled us to get started in Australia, because when we emigrated. But I just knew it was wrong, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I felt so sad all the time. I was getting really angry. And so, are they the symptoms that, that people will recognize? This sort of deep sadness that they have, this lost feeling, and this anger that surfaces as well, and just feeling like you're living someone else's life.
Yeah, the one of my favorite things, and this is going to rub some people up the wrong way, so pardon me for that, but I like to say that because part of my work is life coaching, spiritual entrepreneurship, leadership coaching, career coaching. It's this blend of a few things with a massive spiritual sort of undercurrent riding through the whole thing, right? And so I like to say that stress is actually a free life coach in your life. Yeah. Um, Obviously, there's an unhealthy amount of stress which causes you to snap, but that's because you haven't really been listening, right? When stress shows up, it's actually an opportunity for you to recalibrate and realign, but we don't listen, right? It's like, oh yeah, just another coffee, get up, and just smash it out again and just push a little bit, like grind the anvil just a little bit harder, and I mean, when I say it out loud, people hear it and they go, oh yeah, like why am I doing more of what's not working, hoping that that will finally work? But it's what we do. It's actually what we do. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. Like one finger going out at you, four coming back at me. I remember doing that. It's like, this isn't working. But maybe if I just apply myself harder to what's not working, I'll break through somehow. And it's just like, what? Um, so yeah, for me, the reason I use the word stress is because stress shows up differently for different people. For some people, it's like they retreat and they're not their authentic expressive self. Some people are like, that, yeah, for some people it's anger, for some people it's frustration. For me, I know myself, it's anger. Yeah, like I show up like I'm short, I'm snappy, and it's not my natural being, right? Like I'm not myself when I'm angry. Yeah. But I can tell, and then I've studied a lot about anger because obviously worked with the energy and the frequency of it. For me, anger, Pema Chodron's work. There's a really great book called "Don't Bite the Hook" for those that are similarly inclined as me. Um, and there's just two things happening. Things aren't going the way you want them to, or something's happening that you weren't expecting. And that's what triggers anger. It's just those two things, right? But when you look at your life at large, it's like, well, I didn't plan to be in this role doing this thing. If things aren't going the way you want them to, so you're angry all the time. So stress is just, it's helping you recalibrate back to who you are. So my stress shows up at anger. Some people it's lethargy, some people it's fatigue, some people it's sadness, some people it's apathy. So again, stress being a blanket term, so I'm being a bit cheeky there, but understanding that stress shows up differently for you, but the underlying thing in there is, hey, like stress actually is helping me recalibrate back to where I am. It's a free life coach in your system, but it's the giving yourself permission to listen to it. And that's what I do in coaching and mentoring, right? Like we sit down and we go, hey, what is life actually saying to you about how you're like, what are your feelings? What's in your body right now? What's happening in here that is calling you back to where you're meant to be headed? So I think the system is such that the symptoms show up different for everybody, and it's called cosmic conversations. Like we all have a different astrological makeup. We can even start there. And some people are more earthen, some people more water, some people fire, some people air, depending on what your makeup is. You show like stress shows up differently in your system. But I think if you can start to identify the stresses and the nature of what's underlying that stress, you can start to work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's so true. Stress is just an indicator that something needs to change or you need to make a decision about something. And then once you've made that decision, guess what? Often the stress goes away or whatever it is. I'm a bit like you, Amrit. I'm like a little a niggly person, so I get a little bit angry. Not horrible, but like my husband calls me Little Lord Fauntleroy when I go off on one, or Rumpelstiltskin because I start stomping my feet. And it's like it's awful. I catch myself doing it, and I'm like, "Oh, you're out of alignment again, Hayden." So, what's the most common misconception that people have about spiritual awakening, do you think? And how do you help them see the truth behind those?
The most common misconception about spiritual awakening. Hmm. I'm not sure if it's the most common one, but what comes to me in the moment is to speak to this idea that um, a lot of our spirituality ends up coming back to, there's a better way of framing this, but I call it savior syndrome. I'm not sure if it really is a thing. And maybe I just struggled with it quite intimately because I'm Indian. And Indians have this, there's always a tutelage from a guru, right? So, you start studying with a guru and a teacher and a mentor, and it's fundamental to have good mentors and teachers around you because you can just shortcut your journey in so many ways. Like if there's ever a hack that I recommend to people is like get somebody that's done it before to teach you, right? Like you don't have to figure it all out on your own. Um, but I remember there was points in my journey where very much so I was waiting, itching for someone to come and help pull me out of my funk, my stick, my problem, where I'm stuck. And I think when I feel into that, I feel like so many people are in that space. It's like, and it doesn't have to be that they've got the savior syndrome of a person coming to save them and pull them out, but it could be, maybe this therapy or maybe this treatment or maybe this substance or maybe, there's something external that we're placing this dynamic upon. And I know when I say that, it's like, oh, how cheesy a response. It's like people are putting something external and it's like, bringing people back internal. But when you look at your life, we practically do this, right? We're waiting for something external to help us shift internally. And what I had to come to learn is like that I'm the one that I've been waiting for. Like that person's not coming. That thing's it's not like it's just not gonna come. And it's quite a harrowing moment when you start to realize that. It's like, oh, in some ways, shit, I am all alone. Pardon for swearing, but there's this real tinge of loneliness. But it's kind of what Alan Watts calls like you got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. At that point, it's like, okay, well, it's on me now to if something's going to shift and change, it's on me to create that shift and that change. And I think that's where it starts to look much messier than the elegance that we initially thought it was going to be. It's like, hey, there's going to be a framework or a formula or a pattern or something I could drop into, step into, and it'll just be so neat and tidy. Whereas it really is an inside job. And coming home to yourself. And that can be quite uncomfortable, which is again, it's like, well, you're saying, not to wait for like a coach or a guide or stuff like that. But that's where a good coach or a guide that facilitates this work is actually just supporting you in coming into yourself because it can be difficult to turn that way, right? And so that's what I find is quite a big misconception is like something out there will solve what's going on in here. But turning back inwards and having the courage to face some of the stuff inside to go, like this probably needs to be recalibrated or this could be shifted. And also recognizing that in that moment, you're perfectly resourced to shift it because it wouldn't be in your awareness if you weren't ready, right? The universe is quite gracious in that regard. Whatever's showing up is because legitimately you are poised and ready to work with it. Yeah. So there's a little bit of fear sometimes to look at your internals. But when that shows up, it's like remembering that, oh, like this opportunity is only here because I'm actually ready enough to do this work. Um, yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love what you just said because the responsibility really is on the self, as frightening as it may be, and some quite ugly stuff can come up to the surface, when you're going through the dark night of the mind,
Mm.
and often it happens, during your dream time, sort of bed when you're in bed and then you've got no distractions and you're lying there and you're like, oh my God, why is this memory coming back? Like, oh, I feel so shameful. I feel so guilty. And it's all of that. And it's hard to navigate. But you are on your own, literally, because in the darkness of the morning time, when your mind is going 10 to the dozen, there's no one there who's gonna, say, look, everything's gonna be all right. Your mum's not there to make it all better. You've got to just crack on and actually start reframing. I think a lot of it is
Yeah.
reframing the way you're beating yourself up and for what purpose and what was that programming that
Well,
led you.
also, yeah, also your mind is going, sorry to interrupt. Your mind is also, but I think it's valuable to just add in there to your point, which is your mind's also going through this when as it's rising and it's falling back to sleep, it's going through the delta wave state, part of the mechanical like operations of the mind. And so that delta wave state is associated with the hypnotic states and stuff like that. So you're literally going into self hypnosis as you fall asleep and as you wake up in the morning. And so that's where your brain is actually clearing up cache and going through things and all this stuff that, is tapped into a deep emotional reservoir starts to surface, right? And this is why people that do manifestation work and stuff like that always say, first thing in the morning, why do you have a morning ritual? Right? Last thing at night, like fall asleep to like, your abundance tapes or whatever it is, touch wood that's guiding you at that particular moment in time. I personally believe you should just fall asleep, without anything, but up each to their own, right? Different schools of thought. But that's, the delta wave state is a really potent. And, when you go into meditation, generally you're trying to go from beta, which is everyday functioning, to that alpha level, right, which is a bit more executive thinking, a bit more prefrontal cortex, a bit more connected. Then you've got delta, then you've got theta, right? So you're moving into these different states of the mind and harnessing again the vibrations and sort of going, oh, like this is really what like how my brain's operating at these times can actually fast track like how you actually work with your mind in those states. So yeah, it's a really just noticing why that's happening in those areas of your day as well can be really helpful. Because like you said, then you can repattern and reprogram it because it's like, oh, I'm going into the state where I'm actually very much more malleable. And instead of just having to face it all, yes, face it all with the intention of recognizing that I'm only seeing it because it's on its way out, first of all. And second of all, what else are we subbing in? You know?
That's beautiful because, it's great and it's reassuring to know that because it's coming to the surface, that it's on its way out and it's not just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper until it's forgotten about or buried, and creates all sorts of disease in the body.
Mm.
So what advice do you have for someone who's facing inner resistance, in their awakening process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be someone that espouses resources, like people around you. Obviously, you're going through an internal process, and I know this sounds contradictory to what I said before, but we are interconnected. Yeah, so your process is internal. Yeah, there's so many amazing resources around you to support, guide, nurture. And I mean, some days it might feel like it's an energetic block. So it's like maybe you find someone that, supports you with energy. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm being called to go for a walk in nature. Go take your walk in nature. I think carving out a bit of time and space for what naturally calls you into relationship with self, I think is usually a really good place to start. Recently, we've been talking a lot on the podcast. Self-love is this whole body of work, right? And you could talk about awakening, like what are you really awakening to? And it's like people say it's all unity. Spirituality is unity, right? And in order to understand the unity of all things, how can you, underneath the banner of unity is likely love. Yeah, it's like love lubricates unity. Yeah. But even love is like, oh, like I've got to be in love. Like it's such a body of work. Yeah. Into just even coming into that. So I think for me, my awareness is the starting point is just connection. Like you connect and then you get to love. And then with love, there's more unity, right? So let's start with connection, right? So self connection, connection with others, like just take some time to connect with yourself. And I mean, I know that sounds so bare bones and stripped back and basic. Like Amrit's telling me to take a bath, or Amrit's taking me to go for a walk, or Amrit's telling me to go 10 pin bowling. But the fact of the matter is, so many people tuning into this podcast are just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and you don't have time for yourself. Yeah. It's like you've actively got to carve out space, time, energy for yourself to connect with the self, right? Every meditation that I guide, I usually bring us into a space where even before we go into the meditation, it's just a simple acknowledgement, yeah, which is like, hey, pat yourself on the back for showing up for yourself today. Yeah, like you're just connecting to the self for a quick moment before it's like, here's another thing I need to do, which is my meditation. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's doing the meditation? Is it just something you're doing, or is this you showing up for you and the meditation's just an excuse? Right? And then you start to build this relationship with self. And when you come out, we do the same thing. It's like, thank yourself for showing up for today's practice. Right. And so in those spaces now, it's like, oh, building a connection to self. Right. Now you're starting to build some more intimacy. And I think that is a really good place to start to come into this awakening process, right? Because you're building a connection towards self, right? The greatest awakening is like, they say there's four levels of spiritual awakening. In level one, there's a wish there was a better word for this, but level one is you're a victim, right? Unfortunately, is what it is. It's like life is happening to you is the phrase, right? So, and we all I've been there, and there's that victim mentality. And then level two is, I like to call him the achiever. Yeah, life is happening by you. Like you set goals, you achieve things, and you get out of victimhood into level two consciousness by asking the question. It's like, hey, like, am I really stuck or am I really at the mercy of? So the faculty of questioning is what breaks you through from level one to level two. And in level two, life is happening by you. Yeah. So you're achievement oriented. And I think that's the big shift that we're currently going through right now because people are going through from level two, and this is the shift to level three consciousness. And level three, I mean, you don't forget everything that you learned in level one and level two, but you move into a space where life is happening for you. And I mean, I struggle to communicate this effectively, but it's the flower or the surrenderer. Surrenderer. I always get the words wrong there. And even when you write the word flower, it's spelt like flower. So you're like, how do you write flower? So I can't seem to nail that one, but I think you guys get the energy of it, right? It's someone that's got an incredible amount of trust. They don't really need to set goals anymore. They set a lot of intentions. Yeah. So it's like I set the intention instead of going, hey, like in level two, it's like my business needs to earn, let's just say $200,000 a year or whatever that it is. And that's a very strict goal, through offering this, and these offerings need to get to there. But the person that's in level three is like, hey, if abundance is meant for me, then it's going to come my way. And I'm sure there'll be things that show up on my past. I set the intention for abundance, but however it shows up, whether it's financial, whether it's in relationships, whatever it is in, yeah, I'm trusting that that's actually the type of abundance that's meant to show up for me. Because in fact, I was trying to think that I wanted financial abundance, but what I wanted was time, space, and freedom. Yeah. And I've just been hustling away and compromising all my time, space, and freedom just to make money. Right. So this is level three consciousness where life is happening for you. Even when things show up, they're put like this is again, stress is an indicator, right? Stress shows up, but it's supporting you. It's an opportunity to recalibrate, right? That's level three consciousness. And then just to round out the model, level four, life is happening as you. Yeah, this is unity consciousness. This is we do podcasts of teachers in the non-duality space, like they've literally popped through and they see you as me as you. And it's this really cosmic sort of awareness that they carry. It's really trippy. And it's fantastic to have conversations with them and going, wow, like you can almost taste it when you're in a conversation with someone in the non-dual space. Like, wow, because you can tell that they're not making what they're saying up. Like they've got a felt sense of the interconnectedness of everything and just how contracted ego mind is and how like expansive, unity consciousness is. But yet most of us are actually occupied in ego mind. So yeah, those are the four levels. And so there's different faculties that get you through the different levels of awakening. And I'm just conscious as I use the word levels, it sounds like you graduate and it sounds like a hierarchy, better, worse. Honestly, everybody's on their journey and it's a bit of a spectrum, like I would prefer to use that because you don't, I mean, there's been moments in my life where I feel like there's certainly places where I trust and surrender and flow, but there's other places where I'm still very much trying to achieve, right? And I'm in level two. And there's certain places, certain interactions, certain people where I feel very much as a victim. And I'm like, oh, like I'm still like this regresses me, But it's, I think it's all happening all at the same times, but it's important to have the framework in your mind to sort of be like, which space am I operating from? Am I trusting that this is happening for me?
I think as well, we dip in and out, don't we, of all of the different phases that you've just described so beautifully. And thank you for doing that because it brings so much clarity, for everybody watching and me as well. It's great. And I'm particularly intrigued by level four, now that you're talking about it. I'm like, right, I just want to go straight there, but hang on a
You and me
minute.
both.
Let's just talk about level four.
Yeah.
So, how do we get there, and how do you know when you're there? What you mentioned that you just feel that there's this interconnectivity going on. Um, that state of, of oneness that the mystics aim for, really, isn't it? It's almost
Mm.
like that state of euphoria, that awe that we can experience. And
Yeah, I mean, one of my deepest fascinations about it is because from the contracted ego mind place that most of us occupy, yeah, um, the way they describe it is like, oh, it's I see myself as you, you see me, and then I can just see that, and they describe like this vast void almost within which there's just these like the microcosm is like us playing the human game that we're playing in many ways, and it's very much a game, according to them, and it's interesting because it starts to feel empty like because it almost feels void like and you're like it's empty and then so you oh it's actually I can see why my mind is trying to keep me here because if I was to go there it'd be so empty and hollow and there's like a real emptiness to this void that you're kind of describing in some ways and that's the bit that really hooks me in every time which I think you might find fascinating is I go oh I can see why you would assume that the void is empty but it's full of love. And you're like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's actually quite ecstatic in its nature. And then you go, huh? Like it just doesn't make sense, like in terms of how the fabric of everything could be love and ecstatic and bliss. But that's literally what they describe. In terms of how you break through, I ask this question differently. Like I ask this question of every different teacher again and again. Like, how much is it the work that you put into it? And how much is it grace? Like I think some people just pop into it by grace, but some people do it by work generally, and this is just the teacher, like a couple of teachers that really speak to me, and this is probably what's true for me. So I encourage everybody to do their own research of non-duality. Advaita Vedanta is in the West they call it non-duality to label something that has been carried as a whole spiritual path in the Vedic scriptures as Advaita Vedanta. So that's the original roots of it. If you want to go deeper, um, sorry, six other trains of thoughts opened up as I started getting into Hinduism, but but um but the key thing in there is the teachers that have resonated with me. And so I just share this as a bit of a caveat because I think spirituality is unique to every individual. So what speaks to me may not be what speaks to you and potentially probably shouldn't, right? But for some of you, it's going to spark an alignment, is self-inquiry. There's a piece in there for them, which is like they consistently kept inquiring of the self, the nature of the self. Like thoughts would come up and it's like, that's just another thought. Where is this coming from? Why am I attaching to it? And it was just this consistent. It's almost like being in a meditation and shedding the thoughts. It's almost like being alive and just consistently just shedding the ego. Yeah. And not from a place of like, go away, ego, or go away thoughts. It's just like, oh yeah, there's my ego again. Oh, there's my thoughts again. Oh, and it's like the meditation on a macro scale in some ways, touch wood. And so they have this consistent faculty of self-inquiry where they're just consistently inquiring, and it's exhausting. The people that I choose, like it is exhausting, but it's exhausting for the exact part of you that you're trying to tire out to turn off, right? So you're finally using the mind, not against the mind, but you're turning it inwards to self-inquire, and then eventually just goes, oh, like how futile this whole thing, and then space starts to open up potentially. I haven't done this work. It is calling me, touch wood. It's the body of work that speaks to me deeply as well. Um, but yeah, I'm sure, I'll continue to explore through the podcast and my own spiritual, I'll say adventures, touch wood. Yeah, what happened?
Yes, I think a lot of people tend to have these epiphanies, during an NDE. That state of void that you just described is something that's very common when somebody describe when they've left their body and they go through this black velvety space, which is a void, and it's just pure love. But also, through transcendental, meditations as well, they can sometimes get you there, or even using plant-based medicine like ayahuasca or things like that that can take you into that state. Um, I've always resisted that because I'm a bit scared that I'll leave my body and I probably won't come back. I'll just go straight back to Andromeda. But like for other people, it works. I think that you're right. It's a very much what works for the individual and on how they attain that state of grace, and not being in too much of a hurry, to achieve it. Because when it's meant to happen, I suppose it's destined. It's part of your timeline, part of that, mini awakening process that you go through. But your podcast, Inspired Revolution, it's grown significantly, hasn't it, over the last 7 or 8 years, coming up to 8 years. Um, can you just explain to everybody watching what the initial spark was that led you to create the show in the first place, and how your mission has evolved rather since that initial inception?
Two very great questions. Thank you. Yeah, back to the dark night of the mind that we were sharing at the beginning of this podcast. Career misalignment, corporate construction, building high-rise towers here in Melbourne. Great job, amazing job, incredible job, such a good job for the right person, not for Amrit. And that's not to look down on it. Like it's almost looking down on me. So my values, right? And this is where we start. Like, you got to understand your values. And like my values are connection, contribution, and celebration. These are my three core values. Yeah. So when you meet Amrit, Amrit's just the label for actually these three energies. Touch wood. I connect, I contribute, I celebrate. Right. And the irony is people are like, oh, he must have done so much work on himself. 20 minutes from now, you could be as clear as I am on your values. amritsandhu.com/values. There's a 20-minute masterclass there that I've recorded. And literally, you run yourself through the exercise. You're going to have your core values in 20 minutes, and you think about how long people have been listening to this podcast. In another 20 minutes, they can literally have this level of clarity. Now, I look back on engineering and it's like, was there an opportunity to connect? No. Was there an opportunity to contribute? Kinda. We were building like workspaces, homes. Sure, it was a type of contribution. Was there any celebration? No. Ba-bow. Like, absolutely not. Right. So I was meeting half a value of my top three core values. So, of course, it felt out of alignment. Right. When people say, oh, I'm out of alignment, what are you out of alignment to? Yeah. It's your values. So, again, everyone goes, oh, so values are a spiritual thing. So, I believe we're all incarnated with a personality. Yeah. And there is your soul, right? And your soul is consistently here on a journey that it's potentially, some people say, signed up to learn and experience through this lifetime. Yeah. Some people don't subscribe to that, which is totally fine. But most people on a spiritual path ascribe to this higher self, lower self, soul, personality, spirit, ego, whatever you want to call it. I like Gary Zukav. I like all the teachers, but I like Gary Zukav's description of it. He's wrote Seed of the Soul. He calls it soul and personality. I like those two terms because they have the least amount of extraterrestrial baggage to them, or whatever, extra contemporaneous baggage to them. So you've got soul and personality, and your personality, for me, is built upon the pillars of the temple that are your values, and that's the you we're discussing, right? Your soul is already here. Now, what happens is your soul's here to learn a bunch of lessons, and then you're not living in alignment to your values. And so your soul is consistently actually trying to bring you back. And that's that existential angst and stress that you feel. And you're angry, you're out of alignment, you're like, there's a stress. And so what's happening is if you could get clear on your values, yeah, these are the pillars. Sorry, I know I'm Indian, so it's like, these are the pillars of the temple that is you. My body is a temple. But like legitimately, your values are the pillars of the temple that is your personality, right? And you're so like it's almost like I see it as, in a camera, like the aperture and the light lining up. And then the most amount of flow can finally flow through you. And that's the abundance of energy, abundance of health, abundance of financial resources, abundance of joy. Like that's how it all lines up. So it starts with getting aligned to your values, right? And so for me, I know, like, let's take the podcast as an example. Do I get to connect? Absolutely. Do I get to contribute? Absolutely. Do I get to celebrate? Hopefully, everybody leaves life a little bit richer for tuning into the podcast. Hopefully, like, let's take today's example. Am I connecting? I'm connecting deeply to Hayden, connecting deeply to you, the listener, right? We're connecting thoughts and ideas and people and messages together while we're doing it. Is there a contribution in that? Absolutely. Right. Hopefully, this is enriching everybody's life. Yeah, a little bit. And then there's that celebration. Yeah. Like, hopefully, we live life richer, more fully because of it. Yeah. So I'm just grateful that podcasting is a label. Coaching again has it. Public speaking is a label. But really, all I want to do is connect, contribute, and celebrate. Yeah, we can, and it gets packaged in coaching, it gets packaged in mentoring and coaching, sorry, and podcasting and public speaking. But really, that's what I'm here to do. And interestingly, that's what I value: connection, contribution, and celebration. So that's me in alignment. But it's also what the world values the most as well, right? So the biggest value that I can bring is connection, is contribution, is celebration, right? And so it goes both ways for the personality. And this is really starting to like understand what your values are, I think, is the core fundamental place to begin. Because from there, you can start to see, am I in alignment or am I out of alignment, right? Like, am I going where I'm meant to be going or am I not going where I'm meant to be going? And it doesn't even have to be life, career, like trajectory type sort of stuff. Like the number of arguments that I've forgone with my wife because she's got a very different value set to me. Yeah. I'm connection. Her highest value is integrity. Yeah. And there's certain points where someone says something or does something in a group situation, and she's like, that was not okay. Somebody needed to tell that person that that's not okay. And I go, I mean, yeah, probably someone does. Now, some part of me could easily drop into a spat like an energy of, should have been me, and I'm not the right man for my wife, and I'm emasculinated. And it's like, no, like that is not the kind of connection I want to be a part of. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be like, that's better left alone and just on my merry way because I'm connection oriented, but she's integrity oriented. So she's going to be like, hey, yeah, that's her space to speak up and if she wants to say something. So again, understanding that, but then also not logging heads, which is like, which she's not asking to in that instance, but it can happen in relationships and arguments like that. So that's just one example. So dynamics, decision making, like getting clear on your values, invaluable, pardon the pun. I'm a dad. Oh my God, dad joke. Anyway, sorry.
It's a great dad joke, though. I love a good dad joke. That's made my day, that. But I love that about the values as well, like getting clear on your values. And the way you explain things, Amrit, is so you keep everything so simple and so like actionable as well for people. So that they know what they actually need to do because a lot of it's too confusing. And so that's brilliant that you've been able to kind of decode that in such a way that but all we have to do now is go, right, okay, we just need to find out what our values are and then we'll make sure we're in alignment. That's all super
Yeah.
exciting. But
Yeah.
your podcast has grown so much and you can
Oh,
see
yes.
the spiritual landscape in terms of what people are seeking now. So
Mm.
are there particular topics or challenges that seem to be coming up more often as we go
Well,
into this like 2025 stuff?
yeah. I mean, I see quite a few things at the moment. One of the things that's blowing me away, yeah, I mean, and I'm studying it quite deeply now as well. So I'm quite skewed in my analysis, but I guess I have to just honor what you're asking the question of me. So I'm trying to be as egalitarian as possible, but probably not necessary. Is I see a lot of astrology at the moment coming to the fore, but then also when you tune into astrology, we're moving through some quite large cycles from one era almost to another era astrologically, and we're talking like era like 2,200 year cycles. Yeah, like one's coming to a close, one's opening up at this time. And yeah, I mean, the one that's opening up is much more aligned to astrological awarenesses and understanding as well. And then more and more people are interested in astrology. So it's almost like the inception, the dream within the dream. And I'm watching it kind of happen in front row seats somehow. And so it's pretty trippy, I would say. Yeah, trippy. Pretty trippy watching all that coming into the more common vernacular. Like the other day, I was just studying a little bit, like some other people, some of my clients, I was studying their charts. And then I was like, okay, cool, that's enough of that. I'm gonna go clean the garage. One of my favorite things to do as a dad, by the way. Anyway, so upstairs, cleaning out the garage, and was just taking stuff out to the street, putting it out for hard waste. And like four neighbors basically collected at the front of my house, just randomly, just walking the dog and meeting. And I mean, they kind of know me as a life coach slash engineer guy. Now I go by the inner engineer. But yeah, like I'm standing there and they all just started, and in serendipitous, it's a bit trippy, but they all just started talking about their star signs and and I promise you, I did not bring it, I did not mention it once. I was just studying it downstairs, 30 minutes cleaning my garage, went upstairs, and then all of a sudden, like people are talking to me about astrology. And I live in suburbia. Like I don't live like in a really trippy, dippy, hippie kind of place. Yeah. And I'm just watching this kind of going, wow, like it's in everybody's awareness. So I think astrology is really coming to the fore. I also think there's a lot of anxiety at the moment I don't think we've ever lived in such a comfortable time. I know there's like a lot of stress in the news and stuff like that. But when you look at what baseline creature comforts are, and I know this is going to sound so stoic of me, but like the fact that I can just go turn on a hot shower, yeah, and just have a hot shower, yeah. Like you think back to like a few hundred years ago, like pre-industrial revolution, like that was something that like kings had, yeah. And now we're all living as kings and queens. And we take it all for granted, yeah. So there's this realization that with all the comforts kind of being met now, yeah, there's almost because there's not as much struggle there are different kinds of struggles, but there's a different kind of anxiety that starts to layer in. And so I start to see much more, and maybe you can speak to this as well. People tuning into near death experiences, people tuning into, hey, what happens after here? Because actually, here is okay, like we're here, and they've got more bandwidth to not be obsessed about just where's my next meal coming from? Where's my next thing coming from? It's like we actually are evolving. They call it the Great Awakening. We actually are waking up because it's like, okay, like I've just been in survival for the longest time, and so have my ancestors, but actually, survival's kind of and I know I have the luxury of speaking from living in Australia, and people tuning into this podcast, you've got at least one device to listen to this interview from. You're quite blessed. There are hungry people all over the world, but for those, like there is an awakening that's happening, right? It's like you've got more bandwidth and resources to enjoy life. To come, there is a certain amount of comfort, and then with that comfort comes this, again, almost this existential: what is the meaning? What is the purpose? What am I doing here? Yeah. Why is this all happening around me? And these are great questions to ask. And you've got the luxury. And some people got start to spiral out. So, and it's like, no, 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 no. This is a luxury that you have. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like you're actually like you've addressed so many base layers of the human experience that now you get to come into self-actualization. And yes, it's a difficult place to come into, but you're here. It's the opportunity, right? And so, yeah, that's like the near death. And I think people are exploring death much more intimately as well, astrology. Um, Ancient civilizations is a whole nother thing as well, because things right now, like Tepe, like things happening in there was a recent like LiDAR scan underneath the Egyptian pyramids. Some people are bunking it, some people are debunking it, rebunking it. And wow. I mean, just what did ancient civilizations know that we don't know? How did they create the things that they created? Was there a mass flood? Did things get wiped out? Have there been these extinction phases? How did those that survived? What intelligences did we have? What intelligence do we have? I mean, yeah, there's so much interest in that space at the moment. Like we have a mutual friend in Freddie Silver. I mean, some of the stuff like him going around, traveling around the world, bah. Um, yeah, there's so much underneath. And I think that's where like it's interesting because you asked the evolution of the podcast itself. When I first started out the Inspired Evolution, it was very much, I don't want to say it like this, but it was very much personal development from all of its angles, right? Like we discovered health, we talked about nutrition, finances, people that were in the FIRE movement, financially independent, retired at the age of 30, like all these different types of wealth, like everything that fit under the under personal development umbrella. And then as we got on, from a lot of audience feedback and also scratching my own itch in many ways, touch wood, spirituality just started to become much more of this, yeah, the focus. of the Inspired Evolution podcast. And we're talking about this like trend over like, it took us like 5, 6 years to finally give ourselves permission, or myself to give me permission to go, actually, we're going to focus on spirituality and not the other stuff. Yeah. Which was interesting because I always thought the other stuff was required in some ways. And every now and then you could just sneak spirituality in, right? This is how I used to think. Like you gotta have like, people want to know how to organize their finances, people want to know how to eat better, people want to know how to supplement, people want to know how to move better. And then also don't forget your spiritual. And it was like, and then eventually it got to this point where it was like, actually, no, it's all about having a spiritual experience as this life. And then the rest can be, serviced in other places. We still have wellness conversations, spiritual entrepreneurship conversations, but it's very much grounded from like a spiritual, holistic sort of point of view. And so that's been this massive evolution, especially the last 2.5 years. We've really just given ourselves permission to just dive all the way in on spirituality. And the reason I say that is because people looking from the outside is like, oh yeah, it's a spiritual podcast. But even when you start to get into the spirituality space, it's like near death experiences, ancient civilizations, energy work, manifestation and abundance, like astrology. Like there's so much nuance underneath. We've got Christian mystics coming on. We've got like Tibetan mystics coming on. Well, there's so many different types of bodies of work under spirituality. And I'm just having a lot of fun, touch wood, on the podcast, exploring it all, exploring it all. Yeah,
And it's wonderful that you're delving so deeply into spirituality now, because I think that, you're right. It's like the underlying theme of everything. And
touch
it is
wood.
essential to touch upon the wellness stuff, because obviously that's what opens up your cosmic consciousness, because you have to deal with your red issues. That's what in color therapy we say, your red is your victim stuff, and then you go through your orange stuff and, your shock and trauma, and your yellow empowerment. And then you eventually get up to your violets and your magentas and your blue lilacs. And then you start lining through the soul star. And of course, that's where a lot of the interesting information is, once you've dealt with a lot of the earthly, the human-based nitty-gritty stuff that can hold us all back from even looking there. And you were absolutely right in what you were saying. We are privileged that we've got this opportunity on the earth, in this part of the earth's timeline, although there are multiple versions of earth. I know that, but it's like we're privileged. It is a blessing that we've got that opportunity. So has there been a guest that you've had on your podcast, or a moment that's really inspired you or made an impact on you or your listeners, do you think?
Oh, I'd like to think they all leave somewhat of an impact. Hmm. Maybe I'll just honor my intuition because as you were asking the question, intuitively there was already a response before you finished answering your question, which is not, yeah, like logically the best place to respond from, but feeling into it. Um, I feel a real kinship, touch wood, with Gary Zukav. Mentioned him earlier. He wrote Seed of the Soul, and why I'm mentioning him is because we did a couple of interviews after his beloved, like him and Linda were just, yeah, like to call them soulmates is to put it lightly. Yeah, like Gary would say something as, it wasn't so much that I loved Linda as much as I was in love with loving Linda. Yeah. And you'd listen to Gary and you're like, ah, like he's really sunk his teeth into it. Touch wood. And then she passed over to the other side. And we were chatting, and there was what he was sharing about how he processed the mountain of grief, and even calling it process is not the right term. But you can go listen to the podcast, Gary Zukav on grief, Inspired Evolution. Um, but it was how he was showing up. Here's somebody that's been a spiritual teacher for hundreds of thousands of people, yeah, like over multiple decades, actively doing the work, you know. And I don't know how else to put this, but just the leadership of the man, like just the vulnerability within which he was like, and these are all the places and all the cracks where it really fucking hurts. I mean, touch wood, yeah. I just remember being in that podcast and like the comments as well, people sharing back. It was just like, yeah, it's so yeah. Conversation doesn't really feel like a conversation at that point. It's, conversation feels like a 2D word. Um, there's this connection, and obviously I'm biased. My values are connection, right? So back to that, but there's this connection that's happening in the moment. And I just feel really in awe of some of those moments that happen on the podcast. And they're not exclusive to just that episode with Gary, but when you shared when you asked the question, that's really what just jumped out front and center in mind at the moment. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. It's beautiful. And, that must have been something that has moved something within you for a purpose. Maybe it was addressing a particular fear that you have, or as well, it could mirror back something like that potentially, or just something you really needed to hear at that point. And it's lovely that, that you felt that kinship, you know.
Yeah, I feel a kinship to his work because the soul and the spirit, the soul and the personality thing really helps. Like when I put that in frame for people, they just really get it. So it's like that's easy. Like I can drop them into Gary's frame and then start to like bring them into values and just go boom. Like this is really how we actively work as the inner engineer gets to finally show up and sort of help you navigate how to build that all out in your life. As a coach and a mentor. So that's just, it's really helpful. But Eckhart Tolle is someone I was coached by for 6 months, right? Intimately. And it was beautiful. And that's really where it started. It was like spirit and ego, as Eckhart calls it, right? And then the alignment between the two. So that's really where it started, the work that I do. But I find Gary's terminology much easier. And also, not to sound this way, but I remember because Eckhart Tolle, being coached by Eckhart Tolle to coach others into presence and purpose. I mean, the content was amazing and the way he was teaching was so impressive. Like it was amazing. And yet there was some part of me that was like, I don't want to sound like this, but you've kind of got the luxury, not the luxury. I mean, you're Eckhart Tolle. So when you say, or when even you don't say anything, like if you've seen him walk out on a stage, he walks out, he sits down. The first 7 minutes, he could just say nothing. And there's a transmission that's happening about silence, stillness, presence. Now, I don't know if you guys tuned into this podcast, or you probably have this far. I mean, there is a stillness and a presence, touch wood, that, I work on and, is, but I'm buoyant, yeah, as a frequency. I'm like, I'm loud, I'm goofy, and so I think we all have to honor who we really are. So we're not trying to become somebody else. And so in the teachings, there was this really interesting piece, which was like, I can see that we're supporting people to come into presence and supporting people to come into purpose. But I don't think one for one, I can teach it exactly the way that Eckhart Tolle is teaching us to teach it, because that would be inauthentic of me because I'm not showing up in presence and in purpose, even though this is the work. I don't know if you're getting the nuance there, but that's, that was huge. And so it was really helpful to come into, because Gary is a different kind of expressive to the expression that is Eckhart Tolle. And that felt easier for me to, yeah, just sink into and go, oh, boom, people really get this. And then, boom, we can do the work from there. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's
It really does, and it's
many
interesting
nuances.
because my next question actually to you is that, obviously that many people in the spiritual community speak of living in the present moment and trusting, in the flow of life. But practically speaking, it can be challenging to let go of control. So, I know you mentioned that you do things differently to Eckhart Tolle. So how do you guide your community to practice surrender without feeling like they're giving up control?
Yeah, so you already use the word that I sort of bring people into is you use the word trust. So for myself, I noticed, right, that trust and surrender, two sides, one coin. Yeah. So, and what I mean by that, so I noticed in my life is like, I can't, like, I'm struggling to surrender to something. I'm struggling to give up control. Um, we can zoom out to the nth degree, yeah, and just go like your inability to trust and surrender is one side of the coin, and literally the other side of the coin is if you're not able to do that, it's because you don't trust. Yeah. So I would ask myself this question: is like, obviously, life has brought you and me, Hayden, you listening in to this moment. Yeah. No matter what's happened, it's been hard, it's been good, it's been great, it's been all around the shop, roller coaster, up, down, all around, right? Right now, tuning in, you might be in the most amazing place. You might be in a really challenging place, but you're here having this experience. And so, in some way, the universe has brought you here. Like all those moments that have preceded this moment, that some of them you're aware of, many of them you aren't, you're here right now having this experience. And so, the second question that I ask in that space is, can you trust that the universe is your greatest ally? And it's not a question for your mind. It's a question for you to feel into energetically. And for most people, it's like, oh, actually, no, there was that time, and there was this time, and there was that time. And I was like, yeah, great. You've got narratives, you've got blocks, you've got stories around why you can't trust. Yeah. But noticing, I don't want to sound rude and flippant, how the fuck are you existing right now? Having this experience. So there's an invitation there to recognize, oh, that's a contracted part of myself. Like Gary calls it the frightened parts of my personality. Yeah, I like to call it the contracted part of ourselves. Yeah. So that's a contracted part of you that actually is just holding and gripping. But really, when you zoom out, why? Yeah, because of something that happened in the past. Well, okay, there's your healing work. There's a little T trauma in there. Yeah, soften that grip a little bit. Because the reality is, like, if you look at your mind, like your mind's focused on this sliver right in front of it, a picture of a horse with blinkers on almost. But there's all your subconscious mind. Epigenetics talks about this. Like, there's so much a part of your mind. 97% of the rest of the disc is also operating right now, and you're not conscious of it. And that's just the mind. Think about everything else that makes a fabric a reality. Goodness me. Yeah. And you're here, whole, having this experience. Yeah. So therein we start to invite in a relationship with trust. It's like, can you trust? I find trust is much more of like, oh, I don't trust this and I don't trust that. Okay, can I learn to trust this? And trust is one of those things, you got to fake it a little bit till you make it. Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't actually trust that. And it's like, what would happen if you did? Try it on for size. And you might get burnt. Cool, you can come back. It's uncomfortable to trust, right? But it's like that with relationships. Oh, like I was in a relationship with somebody, didn't work out. Pardon me for this. I hope it doesn't program into anybody, but like, the person cheated on me. Yeah. And it's like, well, I'm never going to trust again. I'm never going to go into a relationship again. When I use that example, that's not the right answer. Yeah. You've got to like open yourself back up again and then do the work to trust someone else again. And you're a little bit more tender and careful, but you might actually heal the whole damn thing because the other person is absolutely worth your trust. Or you can stay closed. Now it's uncomfortable, but now you've got something you can work on, right? In the face of control. It's like, oh, like where can I trust? Where can I trust more? What can I lean into? What do I, and you don't have to like lean into everything all at once. Yeah. It's why again, coaching, mentoring, support, it helps, right? Like you even prioritize your inner work in terms of what feels like it's right now. So where astrology can be helpful as well. It's like now's a great time to focus on this, not on that, you know. But there's that piece, right? So surrender is like this nebulous concept, like you were saying before. It can be so nebulous. Like, I know I want to surrender. I know I want to flow. Yeah. But it's like your inability to surrender is one for one, same side of the same coin, but much more intimate is your inability to trust. So, how do you trust? Right? Same thing happens with presence. Yeah. Depression is all your thoughts in the past. Anxiety is all your thoughts in the future. Yeah. Thinking about the past, thinking about the future, not a problem, not an issue. It's how, as a species, we got to where we are. We learnt from our past mistakes. We planned for the future. The issue is when you spend too much time stuck in the past or stuck in the future, right? Like now you're all like your brain and your psychology is there, but it's not anchored in the present moment. That's why anxiety and depression show up similarly. I think people have tendencies for one or the other, but the challenge is to be anchored in presence, right? And like I can't be trusted with my thoughts, with my experience, with me. Breathe. That's not uncomfortable, Like there's this real, can I trust the present moment? Yeah. So trust is this huge piece, right? That is actually very workable with. It's like I can't trust like to breathe deeper into my anxiety, right? Just breathe just a little bit. It feels uncomfortable. It's like just trust a little bit. Like the mystics talk about breath. Like breath work talks about breath. Like your nervous system needs your breath. Can you breathe just a little bit? Yeah, it's just these little opportunities to trust more and more and lean into it. And not, it doesn't have to all be at once. Yeah, just the right pieces at the right time when you're ready, when you're ready. And even trusting that you are exactly where you are right now and it's perfect where you're meant to be. Yeah. That brings you back into presence. That brings you back into surrender. Yeah. You're exactly where you are. Trust. I'm not trusting. Perfect. Trust that.
Right, it's so simple, isn't it, really? It's just all so simple when you break it down into, manageable chunks. It's like you don't eat the elephant in one go, do you? You kind of eat it in little chunks, and then before you know, you've eaten the whole elephant and you're full.
Yeah. I think I've choked on parts of the elephant before. which is which is why yeah. And I mean it's I just wanted to double click on a word that you used, which is simple, and I find it yeah, thank you for continuously pointing that out because I find, and this is just one of the truths that I've got having interviewed people, like I said, every week for the last 8 years, and then, twice a week for the last 2 years, on top of that. And I just noticed that, and this is just my truth, doesn't have to be yours, but um, when people are complicating things, they're generally selling you something. That's just what stepped in for me now. Whereas the truth is always so simple. It's always simple. Like wisdom is simple, it's profound, it's layered in its simplicity. And simple doesn't mean easy. Yeah. Um, but it's always simple. And it's like, it doesn't need to be hidden behind so many smoke and mirrors. Yeah. It's, yeah. I find it's
Simplicity.
easy to trust it as true when it's simple. Touch wood. Just my
Yeah.
impression.
I love that. I totally agree, 100%. That truth is simple. All right, you should write that on your wall. Alongside a winner never quits and a quitter never wins. So you've spoken about living a life of purpose. And yet, we tend to believe, well, in the world that we prioritize external success, don't we? So how do you balance the pursuit of external goals with spiritual fulfillment?
Yeah, so I unhook. So we build out a vision, right? So in the inspire, like, so okay, let's talk about the Live Your Purpose program, like even mentoring with myself, like the Live Your Purpose program lives in there. We generally look at things in three phases, right? So we align, then we work on your beliefs. So I call it the ABCs of purpose, right? Align, what are your beliefs? Believe, and then create. So then this is where our work also starts to shift quite significantly based to everybody else's because we actually, I'll be helping you write your CV at certain points. Yeah, it's like, okay, this is what you're offering to the world. This is the structure of your offer. This is the bit, and then so that we in create, we actively create it, not just get clear. But the key thing there is we build out a vision. Yeah, so we get really clear on a vision. Now, before we build your vision, we get clear on your values and your strengths, right? Like your innate values and strengths. And we talk a lot about hijacked values and strengths, highlight hijacked curiosity. But anyway, your authentic values. And then from there, we build out a vision. Yeah. And from there, you start to orient yourself towards the vision. But we don't, and this is really interesting because just because it's level 3 consciousness doesn't mean you give up your level 2 consciousness. Remember, it's like you integrate it towards your level 3. You still understand milestones and markers And we set up like within your business key performance indicators, like this is showing that it's on track. This is showing that it's not, right? Even for yourself, like, hey, this is a milestone for you. You're headed towards your goals or you're not, right? We're not attaching our self worth, our persona, our being to said outcome of said goal. It's not what we're doing because it's based on our values, because it's based on our strengths, and because it's our heart's and soul's vision. It actually doesn't even matter. So there's this saying, which I still don't understand. It goes, if you shoot for the moon, you might just land on the stars, which I mean, stars are further away. So I've completely misappropriated the saying, but it makes more sense to me. If you shoot for the stars, you might just land on the moon. That makes sense to me. So pardon me, right? So, but that's the vibe, right? So you set the vision for the stars. Right? I'll give you a very practical example. So we've been running seminars, and the seminars they do really well. And as part of the business, like it works really well. You know, helping people, serving people. There's a great energy. I get to connect. I get to contribute. I get to celebrate. Yeah, where you're helping people, it works. But we're turning them off, and it's like why? And it's like because my long term vision is a podcast studio attached to a retreat center. Like there's this whole thing that I've got as a vision, right? And they're like all on one. And so it's like I look at the seminars and I'm like, does that actually bring me closer to that? And it's like, no, retreats would. And so we're subbing out seminars for retreats. And so does it matter that if I end up with a podcast studio retreat center space that I'm dreaming of? No. It's more about, and again, that's the outcome, I'm not attached to it. The outcome is so expansive, it's so stars that I'm more than content landing on the moon. I mean, even if I make it halfway to the moon, that's astronomical. Yeah, I'm not stressed. Yeah, I'm attached to the process, the person that I'm becoming in the process of pursuit of said goal, said vision. Yeah, and so yes, there's plenty of spiritual ambition in there for the person that is becoming, that I get to be, that is becoming, that I get to be, that is becoming, that I get to be. But it's you can feel it. It's intrinsically within the self. It's not external. It's not out there. Yes, that is a marker and it's helping. And I make sure it's built upon my personality that you know, values, strengths, vision, all stacked in on top of each other. And that's that aligned piece. Then we go into the mindset stuff, the belief stuff, where you're blocked, shadow work, inner child, all that stuff that holds you back, right? Because you can get clear, but there's still stuff holding you back. And then we practically create, right? That's what mentoring and masterminding and the evolve mentoring and masterminding with Amrit does. There's like, this is all the body of work that we do. Touch wood. But that, you know, that's how we target success, is if you want to call it that. We redefine it first of all. We get super clear on your soul and its journey here, right? Soul's blueprint. And then from there, we don't focus on the outcomes. We focus on how inspiring it is for the person that you're becoming in the pursuit. And whether you land there or not, it gives us permission to recalibrate as well because you're not fixated on an outcome. Yeah. When I started the podcast, I didn't have this massive vision for, you know, a podcast studio, retreat center type sort of thing. Didn't. But it crept in over time. And I say this, some people come in and they go, Amrit, I don't have a big vision. And it's like, we'll help you craft it out. 12 dimensions of your life, we build out a vision. Yeah. This is based on the Work with Life book. But you don't have to have a big vision. In fact, I find sometimes you are here for such big things that the universe wouldn't do you the disservice of giving you the entire vision up front because you would just be smothered by paralysis with analysis. So it just gives you the next couple of steps.
Mm.
In its infinite wisdom, it's just like, hey, just go do this thing. And you're like, what? I need to move to Paris. I don't want to move to Paris. And like, just trust me. Like, well, I don't have any kids right now, so maybe I can move to Paris. Okay, off you go. Yeah. And there you meet the love of your life. You two go into work together. Oh my God, you start something incredible. It all started with you moving to Paris. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you never actually get there, do you? So, you know, that's the thing. It's like, so
There's
enjoy the
such wisdom in
journey.
that. Yeah. It's the journey. Yeah. Yeah.
You never get there. And I love the, you know, it's almost like you know, just going into the baby steps and knowing that the, you know, the vision that you have is an important part of the process. But yeah, releasing yourself to the actual outcome. It's funny because I was having a conversation yesterday with Michelle Buchanan. She is a fantastic numerologist. She's over in New Zealand and she used to do numerology. She brought it into the mainstream. So she would do it on GMTV, like New Zealand's version of that. And she said the very same thing to me yesterday. She said, "Oh, you've really got to just release yourself to the outcome, and that will give you that sense of inner peace. Really, it's like it's not about the end result because you never get there. It's just the process. So it's nice to hear that again, and I feel like that's a very important message for me at the moment. I definitely find that I get very impatient with everything. And it's the impatience that almost blocks my enjoyment of the process, and that's annoying because this is a privilege, to be able to do this. But yeah, it's like I really just want it now.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite enlightened because I joked that entrepreneurs wanted it yesterday.
That's
Uh,
it.
yeah, and there's always that, right? There's the propensities of the mind and how it, and I think some part of that speaks to our time in many different ways. Like in a world of instant gratification, we're groomed for things to have happened yesterday before we even thought about it. And there is, yeah, I mean, I lost my dog, not lost her, like that sounds weird, but she passed away, sorry. 4.5 weeks ago now. Oh no, 5, sorry. And yeah, it was just a really important reminder as to the things that we chase. And so many of us are looking to spend more time, find more time in the pursuit of things. Um, but we're spending up all the time in the pursuit of things, and it's this real, it's just it somehow that part, it was like, oh yeah, like I was structuring my life in a way to have more time, space, and freedom, whilst giving up exactly time, space, and freedom in pursuit of time, space, and freedom. And I do, and I know when I hear like people that have been doing, like I've been in this space for almost a decade now, right? So I get the luxury of sort of saying, oh no, like now I need to carve, because there's been moments where I wouldn't have gotten here without applying myself the way that I have in the past. So, not discounting any of that. But there is this realization around some of the folly of, at a certain point, that muscle has to not just stay contracted all the time. You've got to let that muscle go as well. You can't just keep on keeping on to get to where you're going, because where you're going, you're just going to drift right past, right? It's like, oh, like I've got the time and the space and the freedom, right? Um, it's a higher order of problem, and people get there later in their journey. Initially, it's like calibrate. Then it's like once you've calibrated and you're on your journey, don't notice, don't like, do notice. Don't let your blessings slip you by. Yeah. Um, yeah. Um, I wrote a song. Oh, I didn't write a song. I got given a song, but anyway, there's a song that I sing, and it goes, yeah, clouds in the sky where water flies. I pray miracles don't pass me by. Touch wood. And it's more about your awareness. Like there's water flying in the sky. Think about the ocean, and then you think about like the fact that clouds are literally bodies of water. There is an ocean in the sky. When you think about gravity, all the stuff, and it's like, that's not a miracle. I don't really know what is, right? Like there's water flying around the planet, but we're just oblivious to it. It's just like, oh yeah, that's norms. It's like, there's how many miracles on the daily are just passing you by. Um, and then, we set ourselves on these trajectories to try and achieve things, to try and accomplish things. And I mean, I see it a lot in the entrepreneurs that come to me. You're here and you've got a goal for 2 years from now. And in fact, you hit it 2 years from now, but you never catch up to your goals because your goalpost moved to another further 2 years. And then your goalposts move again for it, and you just keep like you keep chasing this expanded version of yourself, which is it's spiritual in many ways. Like, of course, you're not meant to be stagnant, but the amount of like oomph you bring to it, like, I just gotta get there, only to get there and be like, no, I just gotta get there, only to get there. It's like, no, I just gotta get, oh, bro. Whew. But again, trust, right? That's by design as well. It's perfect for those people because eventually they realize I'm not going about this the right way. We end up in coaching and mentoring with Amrit. We start having more of chats around this, and it's like, that's that stress that you built up to bring you back into alignment. What does alignment look like? What does it feel like? Right? And from there, we start to recode, reprogram your trajectory and your journey forward. Touch wood.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's very interesting that you started that off by talking about your dog, and I'm so sorry to hear that about your dog, Amrit, because like I have my spaniels here with me like each and every single day, and they even sleep in my bed with me as well. So
Yay.
I get that first thing in the morning thing, where they're snuggled in, and I just lie there, and that's actually one of the happiest times of my day. Is just
Mm.
that, just waking up. We're all just waking up, and I just feel so blessed that I've got these two little hearts beating next, well, three actually, because there's my husband as well. But he's normally pushed over to the other side of the bed. The dogs are spread eagle in
Relegated.
the middle.
Relegated. Priorities.
But it's like I love that bit and I never want to get up. I'm just like, I'll just stay here today, It's like it saves me
Mm.
having to, strive for things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're right, they do bring so many blessings, and um it's just the most heartbreaking thing when we lose a pet,
Well, it's
they
that,
teach us
and
so
it's, I
much.
think the reason I started with that was because in so many ways you don't, and I know it sounds super cheesy, but like you don't know what you've got until it's gone, really. And there's no fabricating it. There's no, oh yeah, I'll try to make the most of it. Like what her passing taught me was like all my friends, like I'm so devastated, and all my friends are like, yeah, but she had an awesome life as a dog. Like she was your dog. And like I did trippy things. Like I had a little backpack where her head would pop out. She was little Japanese Spitz. And I'd be walking around shopping malls where dogs are not allowed. I'm like all against like rules. Yeah, okay. And she'd just be in my backpack though. She wasn't annoying anybody. And she had a really rich life. We would go riding together, cycling together. She'd again be in the backpack. Her head was hanging out here like Banjo and Kazooie, and we'd be cycling around. Then, she'd pop out. We'd go for rides together. And it was just, we had a great, we had a great time together. And even then, the guilt of like, there should have been more. We could have done more, could have done more. And it was taught me a lot. She taught me a lot in her passing. Um, in that, that's always going to be there you know like you think about the friends you don't get to spend all your time with and all this sort of stuff. That's always this regret. Phew, you know yeah, it's a huge piece. And I mean, I don't want to get super dark, but I mean, I don't even think it's that dark now. Like, it's they call death the great advisor, and rightfully so. Like, because we're talking about regret here, and I think really what's at the heart of it is at your final frontier in this lifetime, I can almost say you pretty much get. I used to be when I found, and maybe this is a journey, interesting reflection on where the inspired evolution has been. I used to like I was set out on the trajectory of building a life of no more regrets. The maturation that's kicked in is very much at this point that you're gonna regret. You don't get out of that. Like you don't get out of regretting. The mastery that you have, I'm use the word mastery, but the choice or the freedom that you have is to be able to choose your regrets. Are you choosing them wisely? Yeah. Like I didn't get to do that, but I did get to do this, right? Like I didn't become the guy that mastered the piano, but I'm really good at the guitar. Yeah. Like you get to choose. It's like I'm really satisfied with my relationship with the guitar. I regret not having learnt the piano, but I had some great jams along the way.
That's beautiful, and it seems like a beautiful place for us to sort of depart the conversation without any more regrets. And I know we didn't really even scratch upon the surface of questions that I really have for you. But hopefully, we'll be able to get you back onto the show, sort of later on down the track, to be able to sort of touch upon some of the real juicy stuff that I had that sort of aligned for you today.
Oh, Hayden,
But
I'd
thank
be
you so
absolutely
much.
flattered. Yeah, I'd be absolutely honored to be on. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Well,
sorry, I interrupted.
you're amazing. Like you're very, very easy to listen to, and I love your depth of wisdom for such a young man. You're an inspiration to so many people, and I think that it's great to have role models like you around. That are here to bring in the next wave of wisdom. So thank you once again. Now, for anyone who's interested in following Amrit, then obviously all you need to do is go onto YouTube and then just pop into the search "Inspired Revolution Podcast," and I'll put the links to his website and YouTube channel in the description below so that you can check him out. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel as well,
Mm.
because it's growing. Yeah, and make a comment on the video as well if you don't mind. That would be amazing. And Amrit, I'll definitely be reaching out to you again in the future, and hopefully one day I can even appear on your podcast, talk about numerology and color therapy. That'd be amazing too. So
That'd be so much fun. Yeah, awesome. It's yeah, and when this episode comes out, I generally take the time to, yeah, especially in the initial window, as a guest, I'll reply to people's comments as well. So if they leave comments below that, I'll have a look at those. And yeah, thank you so much, Hayden. Like, yes, I mean, your podcast is amazing. It's such a gift to be here in the depth of your questions. And yeah, I'm sure the remaining questions are also really exciting. So I'd be honored to be back on. Yeah, and just feeling into just, yeah, just your natural flow with this whole thing and just your depth of awareness. It's really an honor. You've been very kind and generous in your compliments, but I think it speaks volumes to the questions you ask and the space that you hold. I feel really blessed to be here today. One thing I will say to the audience again as well is, guys, practically, please do go get your values. 20 minutes, like amritsandhu.com/values. Maybe Hayden can put a link in the description below. Yeah, it's honestly like 20 minutes, you'll be as clear as I am on your values. And it's just such a grounded, practical takeaway that can just shift so much in your life that, yeah, I mean, I've been speaking about it for the better part of an hour, so I'll shut up now. But
absolutely,
yeah,
I'll
highly
I'll definitely
recommend
put
it.
a link down. I'm gonna go and find what my as well. I'm like, what are
Yeah.
my values? I'm like, I feel so lost in life. I don't even know what my values are.
It's
It's like,
helpful.
oh
It
damn,
really
I should
helps.
have done this weeks ago.
I'd be, yeah, I mean, you can always email me back in the process of it and let me know what your values are, as I'm really curious to see what people's are. And it's always surprising. They're always similar. And that's not because we're all the same as human beings. Obviously, if you're tuning into this podcast and you're going to go get your values, you have a value like contribution or health or freedom or connection. That's what I value. That's kind of what Hayden values. And so we all value, like we attract each other because those are the values. That's the sort of frequency. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I could do
I
this
do have
forever.
I have a feeling, yeah, our values are definitely synchronizing. And I think dogs has to come upon that as well. It's like
Oh, big
dogs,
time.
freedom, and probably cruising, probably.
Yeah.
And that's all fine. But until next time, stay aligned, stay inspired, and keep shining your light. Namaste.